Today, I want to talk about the rebooted or new Scorpio Gold. So a lot of you may have heard of Scorpio. It's been around for nearly 15 years. The asset portfolio has changed a little bit, especially in the past 3 or 4 years. But at the end of the day, we are still centered on the core assets, and I want to share this transformation and this new approach to some really great assets in one of the best mining jurisdictions in the world. Just skip through the forward-looking statements. So as I said, Scorpio's kind of undergone a transformation over the past, I'm going to say, 8 months. We've brought in a new team, new investors, and with fresh capital, the company really is in a position to move forward with a very strong technical focus on looking at the assets in a much different light. Whereas historically, Scorpio's really focused on mining and production. The company produced over almost, call it 300,000 ounces between 2010 and 2018. Today, the company's much more focused on taking that existing infrastructure, taking those assets, and looking at them from a much more geologic lens, and how we can rebuild a significant resource on both projects, and shifting our focus to one of the newer projects that Scorpio has, to really develop a much better foundation to drive the company forward. The Manhattan Gold Wedge project is a project that I'll dive into shortly, but really at the end of the day, the project is the core focus of how we want to move the company forward. There is a notable resource that we've defined internally, and we look forward to getting that resource out in the immediate short term. And then beyond that, there's a lot of exploration to really expand that. It's a great resource and a great starting point, but really at the end of the day, we see a lot of value in this Manhattan district, and we really want to continue to develop that. Looking at Mineral Ridge, which is the historic project, the flagship project that Scorpio's had for a long time, our understanding of it is it has produced gold. There is a modest resource still there today, but at the end of the day, we believe there's a much bigger system, and we just need to get a greater understanding, invest in a kind of going back to basics, doing the geologic mapping, and moving the project forward from there. So, as I said, 2 proven projects in Nevada, both of which have produced historically. The Manhattan Gold Wedge project is 2 projects, one half of which was formerly owned by Kinross, the other half has been owned by Scorpio since 2012. And then the second project is the Mineral Ridge, as I said, the flagship asset, which has produced 500,000 ounces in modern history since the late 80s, and prior to that, about 500,000 ounces in the early 1800s. And North Star is the new project. It's a project that we brought in. I recently joined the company as CEO, that was last Friday, actually. But I've been involved with this transaction since last May, and we finally consummated it, closed the deal last week with the restructured Scorpio, and bringing in the North Star asset, which I'll talk about in a bit. So, focusing on Manhattan Gold Wedge, it really is 2 projects. We have the Gold Wedge mine, which is a fully permitted underground project with a 400-ton per day operational permitted gravity mill. The Gold Wedge mine really has a modest resource, but there's a ton of exploration potential. And then in 2021, Scorpio was able to, after a long period of going back and forth with Kinross, was able to take advantage of Kinross's divestiture of U.S. assets and acquired the former Echo Bay mine called Manhattan. The Manhattan centered on 2 pits, collectively produced about 280,000 ounces historically, from 1981 to 1991. But really, there is a lot of exploration that there's the potential to be done here. And we believe there's a lot more gold in and around these pits and along the Reliance Fault as a whole. So, talking about historic exploration and current exploration, Manhattan's had over 1,200 drill holes in it. It's over 100,000 meters of drilling, and no one's ever really looked at it in a remodeled way over the past 15, 20 years. So when we got into the data room earlier, or mid last year, we were able to remodel all of that data, and that's how we came to the conclusion that there's a significant resource opportunity here in the short term, but then beyond that, there's a lot of exploration potential. You can see here on the right, there's some of the high-grade drill results that Scorpio got in 2022 and 2021, probably the best intercept being that 27 grams over 16.8 meters. And it's our intention over the next 4 to 6 months to really follow this up, continue to do more drilling, Some of these holes will have to be twinned as we work towards defining the resource, and this is really the short-term catalyst that we believe will put the company in a re-rate position. I'm not going to go too much into the geology, but these slides just kind of show the resource potential, especially when you look at the areas in and around the pits, or in and around the edges of the pits, and then beyond them as well. Looking at the bigger picture, the real opportunity here is to consolidate the Manhattan district. And these two projects, the Gold Wedge and Manhattan, have never been put together. And no one has really understood that Scorpio has been able to do this since 2021. When you look at where these projects are located, they're directly south of Round Mountain, which is Kinross's 15 million ounce mine, which is one of the largest in Nevada. Beyond that, the geology and the contact point of where the Reliance Fault meet the Manhattan caldera is really the opportunity. And a lot of that contact happens on the edges of on our project, along the edges, and that's where we want to continue to do more exploration. So, as I said, Manhattan, from our perspective, is a forgotten gem. A lot of people haven't really realized what's been there. The potential to move these projects forward is really made possible by the recent financing that we closed. We closed $6 million last Friday, so the company is in a position to move forward on these projects. Our next step is to really remodel all the data, which we've done a lot of already, and then define the plan to make that resource 43-101 compliant. Beyond that, we have a lot of exploration potential outside of the existing resource, and we intend to do that exploration over the next 4 to 6 months, and then ultimately publish that resource and hopefully expand it at the same time. Conducting the metallurgy and all the other necessary things to really make it a cohesive plan, to put forth a cohesive plan. So moving on to Mineral Ridge, as I said, 1 million ounces produced historically, 500,000 in the 1800s, 500,000 in modern history. And Mineral Ridge has had a long history, and some of you may know it. Scorpio's been around for a long time. But one of the issues with Mineral Ridge has always been metallurgy. And from our perspective, that metallurgy is a concern, but the infrastructure that exists there is really the exciting piece. The ridge is quite a lot larger, and there's a lot more exploration potential inside the mine gates and beyond the mine gates with the new North Star project that really present this opportunity to leverage that infrastructure with a much more defined resource. Scorpio's always been a mining company first, non-exploration company, and as we come into this, we think that there needs to be a geology-first approach. We really need to define a bigger resource. There's a lot of opportunity to do so. There's a lot of targeting. There's a lot of historical workings, and be able to leverage the current mine that's currently in care and maintenance. It could be turned on tomorrow with the right capital. But really what we want to focus on is building a much larger resource to be able to leverage that infrastructure and put it back into production in a much more methodical way. So this just kind of looks at the numbers of historical production. So in 2018, Scorpio did a feasibility study. This is right after the mine went into care and maintenance, to build a 4,000 ton per day mill with a CIL plant attached to it. Really the impetus for that was Scorpio, as I said, Scorpio's historic issues have been with metallurgy on Mineral Ridge. The gold is silica encapsulated, which means the recoveries off the heap leach operation that's there are typically between 60 and 67%. But with this mill that they set out to build in 2018, they could get 90+% recovery. One of the unique things about this is that this mill is fully permitted, and they could break ground on this tomorrow. And this really kind of speaks to the value of the infrastructure more than anything. There is significant, the infrastructure is worth a lot, but the water rights on both projects are really the focus. And where I'd go with this is whether or not this mill makes sense is going to be determined on the exploration that we move forward. This just kind of looks at North Star and the high-grade samples that exist along the ridge. You can kind of see some of the targeting here. We have the proposed drill holes as well as the Wyman Formation. This is just touches on some of the infrastructure. And as I said, really, Mineral Ridge needs a new approach in much the same way as Manhattan. Being able to leverage the infrastructure by taking a geology-first approach, expanding and doing exploration, and then explore production opportunities post that. Just to recap, really the investment upside is taking these assets that have had a long history, have a lot of value, bringing a new approach to them with new management and a newly financed company. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions after the session.